All right, the time now is about 3:59, heading right into 4 o'clock p.m. And so we will go ahead and get today's session started. Thank you everyone who was able to log in and join today's session. My name is Asia Simpson. I'm your wellness and benefits consultant. I will be walking you through today the basics of the flexible spending accounts. We do this workshop typically every year around this time, and we are going to do it again this year. This session will be recorded. So if for whatever reason you end up having to leave a little early or, uh,
Asia, you're muted.
oh, am I muted?
I could hear you at the beginning, but I can't hear you now.
Can you?
I
Okay.
can hear you now.
Oh,
Yes,
you can hear me now.
you're
Okay.
good. You're good now.
Okay. I'm looking at it. I'm like, I don't see mute. Do I have the right speakers on? Okay, great. Thank you for letting me know that. So this session will be recorded. So if for whatever reason you have to leave a little bit early, or you know someone who is not able to join, or you just want to watch the session again just to refresh your memory, this information will be available to you. It will be sent out. Typically, it's sent out the week after the session is done. We are finishing today's session, and then we have some resources that I look to get from the vendors from the virtual vendor booth session tomorrow. And so that will actually complete all the information I need to compile in a resource document that will be available to you that will include this recording. You will also be able to download the slides that are in this recording. And if you missed yesterday's session, you will be able to replay yesterday's session as well as download the resources from yesterday's session. So without further ado, I want to start off with just letting everyone know that with today's session, a little bit different from yesterday's, we're going to go ahead and go through all of the content first, and then I'm going to open it up for any questions that you might have. And then, like always, we will close it out with a raffle. And so we will get started with that today. And just please make sure that you keep yourself on mute unless we are in the part of today's presentation where we're asking questions. For right now, we'll just keep it on mute. That way it doesn't interrupt anyone's ability to hear the content that is being shared today. Okay? All righty. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I am going to go ahead and share my screen here. I'll make this a bit bigger. Hopefully you can see this. As I mentioned today, or mentioned just a bit ago, this is the basics of flexible spending accounts. What we're going to cover in today's session as it pertains to flexible spending accounts, we'll start with, first of all, well, what is a flexible spending account? Some of you on today's session may know what it is, but some of you may not. We want to talk about, I want to talk about how you can save with using a flexible spending account. And then I'll talk a bit more and go into depth about how flexible spending accounts work. And we'll just do some highlights on the plan administrator for your flexible spending account. We'll go over some resources and then we'll open it up for questions and close everything out with the raffle. All right, so what is a flexible spending account? You may or may not have heard of them before in this session or from people you know, but essentially what a flexible spending account and how I'm going to refer to it going forward, just because it's a lot to get out, I'm going to call it an FSA. An FSA is essentially a special account into which money is deposited, and you can use that to pay for certain out-of-pocket healthcare related costs. Now, the money that you use from your flexible spending account are for specific healthcare related expenses. And the IRS does regulate what those are. So any administrator who is administrating a flexible spending account, they are bound by the parameters of the IRS in terms of what it can be utilized or what you can use your flexible spending account for. And there is a list of those. Some of them are pretty obvious. Eye appointments, doctor's appointments, paying for your prescriptions. But then some things are not quite as obvious. And what we'll do is we'll take a look here at an abbreviated list of some of the things that you might be able to use your flexible spending account for, and where you can go to find a more extensive list. But they are very specific. And you fund this account through your payroll deduction. So that means you go through your benefits department, and we'll talk a little bit about how that works. But essentially, you have to delegate the amount that you want, and then it comes out throughout the year, over the year throughout your from your payroll deduction. Now, the great thing about this is a tax sheltered account. So that means that whatever amount that you set aside, you're not being taxed on. So in essence, it can lower your tax liability. So it's very helpful. And I'm going to actually show you an example so you can see kind of what that looks like with a person who decides they want to do a flexible spending account versus how they can save in opposition to if they don't do it. Now, as it pertains to you all, there are two types of flexible spending accounts that we're also going to be discussing here shortly. But just to give you a little preview, the two types are the healthcare reimbursement account, which many of you are probably know to be the flexible spending account. And then there's the dependent care reimbursement account, which some of you may not know about, but it is an option and you can have both, okay? If you elect for it. So let's just talk about how you can save before we hop into the meat of it, and why I think it's a great idea for many people who have healthcare related expenses. Let's take the example of a employee, a potential employee. This is not a real person. This is simply an example. This is not representative of their income or their actual expenses, but this is an example. So let's just say Karina is single with 3 children, and she earns $3,000 a month. She pays $300 a month, or $300 a month in childcare expenses, and $25 a month for prescriptions. So essentially $325. The calculations here are going to kind of show you what it looks like. So without an FSA, let's just start by looking on the side without an FSA. She's got her income of $3,000 and she's taxed on that full income. And so it's, in this example, $271.25 for federal, $97.11 for state, and $207.69 for Medicare. Please don't count these calculations as being absolutely correct. Okay, this is again an example. So when you have all of these taxes taken out, in this example, her net income is about $2,423.95. Well, she still got her expenses. So after her net income, then she's got to still pay for those healthcare expenses, for childcare and prescriptions. So her take-home income after she pays out all her taxes and pays for her healthcare expenses is a little over around $2,000. Okay. Now, if she had an FSA, on the other hand, she has her same $3,000 income. However, her $325 she decides to allocate to her FSA because she knows she has to pay for them anyway. So instead of being taxed on $3,000 worth of income, she's taxed on $2,675 worth of income. So that means her federal taxes are a little bit lower, her state taxes are a little bit lower, and her Social Security is around the same. So instead of her take-home income being each month being $2,098.95, it's $2,156.83. So that's a savings, if you do the math, somewhere in the neighborhood of close to $60 per month. And if you add it all up, that is about around $700 a year that she has saved. So you can kind of see, and again, we only used a smaller amount. Many people have more expenses, so they need to allocate more. And we'll talk about what the maximums are. We'll also talk about how to kind of like get an idea of how much you should set aside. But here's just an example of like how you can save and where it can have an impact for you. So who might benefit? In the example, we talked about Karina, who is a single mother with 3 children, but who else can benefit for this? Well, a lot of people can benefit. Anybody who has regular, planned, or predictable out-of-pocket expenses for the following types of expenses should consider. So we already know medical, so that is your, you can use it to pay for co-pays, you can use it to pay for prescriptions, you can use it to pay for anything that's out of pocket, like if you have to pay out of pocket for durable medical equipment. Those are the types of things that you can pay for, but you cannot use it to pay for your premium. And you guys really don't need to worry about that with the district, because you have very low premium or almost no premium that is deducted from your paycheck. But I do want to just mention that, especially if you have a spouse that is on the plan, you can't use it to pay for their plan that you might be on for premium. But you can use it, however, for your children and dependents that are not paid by insurance. Okay. I mentioned you could pay copays, prescriptions, and also your child and dependent care expenses. So things that you basically come out of pocket for throughout the course of the year, that's what you can generally use this for. So it's very beneficial to you, especially if you know every single year without a doubt there are things that you're just going to have to come out of pocket for. And the best way to utilize this is, well, if you've got to pay it anyway, you might as well be able to pay it in a way in which you don't have to pay taxes on the money. So, how does it work exactly? I've been talking about it. So, let's talk about how it works. So, we're going to break it up into the two that I mentioned, and we're going to start with the healthcare reimbursement FSA first, because that's the one a lot of people are most familiar with. So, how the healthcare FSA works. Essentially, you would decide around open enrollment, which we're coming up on it here soon. You would decide how much you would like deducted out of your paycheck throughout the course of the year. And the maximum amount that you can have deducted is up to $3,200 for the 2024 year. So this year, all the way to the end of the year, it's $3,200. So when open enrollment comes around, if you say, hey, I think I want to get an FSA, you can have allocated anywhere up to $3,200. Okay. And these again are for expenses for yourself, for your spouse, your dependents, that you can get reimbursed for those. And you actually have access to the full amount, whether it's 3,200 or 1,000 or 1,500. You have access to the full amount at the beginning of the year, like right as the year starts. So you don't have to wait until all of those deductions have come out of your paycheck. You have access to it right away, and you have access to it right away because of the way the IRS defines these types of expenses. They define them as unpredictable. And so because they define them that way, your full election amount is available right away. Okay. First day of the plan year. Okay. Now, how do you know how much to put in there? Because that's the second question I get. I'm like, oh, I hear like, okay, Asia, this is great. I want to put some in. How do I know how much do I determine to, what should I put in there? Well, before you enroll into an FSA, you want to kind of stop and think, about throughout the course of the year. And this is something you should really do each year because your health situation could change, your health needs could change. But think about, okay, this year, do I have any big ticket expenses from a health standpoint that I need to take care of? For example, some people have to get dental implants. We all know dental implants, even though you guys have a great dental plan, no dental plan covers dental implants 100%. So you could use it for something like that. Do you have to have your kids have to have braces? That's something that you want to factor in. You also want to think about seasonal allergy products. And you want to make sure that you're looking at the list too, because some of these do fall on the list of things that you can expense or use for your FSA. But you also want to think about, okay, do I have more than my regular routine checkups? You want to factor your routine ones in, but if you have any type of specialty services that you think you're going to have, or if your children or any dependents that you have on your plan are going to have to go into the doctor, even if you don't know the exact number of visits, even if you don't know, how, what the cost is necessarily going to be specifically, because you don't know if it's going to be an office visit or inpatient care or whatnot, I would say guesstimate on the more conservative side and factor that in there as well. And then any eye exams, dental visits, things that are not going to be covered by your actual plan, those are the things you want to kind of calculate in your mind or write down, or you can even look at previous years' receipts that you might have. If you don't have the receipts and you're a Kaiser member, you can check in your Kaiser portal. If you're not a Kaiser member, all of the various plans typically have a portal where you can check and see what was it that you paid out of pocket throughout the course of the year. And you can usually find that information. Anthem, I think they have an explanation of benefits, and Blue Shield has something similar. And you can kind of see, okay, well, what did the plan pay? And then what did I have to pay? So, and you can do the same thing with your dental and vision, and prescriptions as well. So that would be kind of a way you would want to estimate it, kind of tally all of that up and use that as a starting point. I stress that if you've never ever used a flexible spending account before, I would stay on a little bit more of the conservative end because, which brings us to the next slide, if you find that you have gotten closer towards the end of the year and you haven't used all of your money, let's just say you allocated $1,500 and you got to November, December, and you've got $500 left. Okay, well, if you don't have any type of expenses that are going to warrant you using that full $500, you're in luck because while not every employer who offers an FSA is required to, Montebello Unified School District has chosen to provide you with the option to do a $500 rollover if you did not use all of your funds. So you can roll over up to $500 of unused funds into the next year. Now, this applies only to the healthcare FSA. It's not an option for the dependent care FSA. But if the healthcare FSA, you still have $400 or $500, you can roll it over into the next year. And this will not affect your next year's contribution amounts. So let's just say you had already had it in your mind that for the upcoming year, you were going to allocate $2,000 for the year and you roll over that 500, you have a total of 2,500. So the $500 rollover does not affect your New Year's election amount, okay? Even if you chose to do the maximum election amount, which is the 3,200. If you rolled over that 500, now you have 3,700. So just know that with this rollover, it can be helpful. But I would err on the side of caution when making your decision around how much. Be conservative the first year around. Because it is, you don't really want to lose the money because anything beyond that $500, you will lose. Okay. So I've been talking about different types of expenses that you can use the healthcare FSA for. And so here are just, this is an abbreviated list. This is not representative of the full list. If you want the full list, then what you can do is contact CPI. CPI is the name of the plan administrator. And then just hang tight, we'll talk a bit more about the plan administrator here in a minute. But if you want a full listing of all of the services, you can either go on their IRS website or you can contact CPI customer service by phone or email, and they can provide you with a full extensive list. However, some things that are right out the gate that you will be able to use it for is copay amounts. I mentioned that, deductible amounts, lab tests if you have to pay anything out of pocket, prescription drug, childbirth classes, etc. And then for the dental, I mentioned dental implants, x-rays, orthodontia, which is the braces that I mentioned, contact lens costs that are not covered by your plan. You all have a pretty extensive, a pretty rich vision plan, so you may not have contact lenses costs, but if you decide to get some enhancements on your glasses, that might work. Or if you want to get LASIK, you could use it for that. Whatever amount you have available on there, you can actually use it for LASIK as well. So now there are some items and services that are not listed in this abbreviated list that can only be reimbursed or you can only use your FSA for when accompanied by a doctor's permission. And they're very specific. I think some of them may even be typically over-the-counter drugs are not, like vitamins and whatnot, are not generally, you can't generally use those for flexible spending account. But if it's accompanied by a doctor's prescription and they're very specific, like it's a very special type of vitamin that isn't typically just easily available, you may be able to get it there, get it with the doctor's prescription. Some ineligible expenses. So baby formula, breast implants, burial expenses, insurance premiums. I mentioned that a bit earlier, but I also mentioned it's not so the premiums are not really an issue for you as Montebello Unified School District employees because the premiums are usually little to nothing, but it's not allowed by the IRS. And if you have, a spouse who covers you on their plan and you cover them on yours, and you work for two different organizations, you can't attempt to use your FSA to pay their premiums. So just know that. Wig maintenance, I know that sounds kind of funny for some people, but you've got to think there are people who are going through cancer treatments, and so they do have wigs. So that is on there for a reason. And there are a lot of other different things like specialty foods, suntan lotions. I mentioned that it was on the as an option before, but again, some of these things are prescription. If they are accompanied by a doctor's prescription, that's a bit different than just going in and buying regular suntan lotion. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So I mentioned that CPI is who would be able to give you an extensive list, and then the IRS, you can check the IRS website as well. Okay. Oh, also, you can't use your FSA for illegal operations. Okay. I want to say that. All right. So from the healthcare dependent, the healthcare FSA is different than the dependent care FSA, and they are two separate ones. And yes, you can have both. Okay, and they both have different stipulations. A dependent care account is for daycare related expenses for children, but it can also be for elderly parents or older dependents who may not be able to care for themselves. So you can use it for dependent care for them. The IRS maximum is $2,500 per qualifying dependent for a total of 500 per house or 5,000 per household. The only downside is if you're married filing separate, you only get 2,500 per household. And if you're married filing separate, you probably know that from a tax standpoint, there are a lot of caveats and things to your disadvantage for married filing separate. So sorry on that, but that is an IRS regulation. I will also say that the minimum allocation amount for this type of account is at least $100. Maximum is 2,500, but the minimum is 100. Okay. The dependent care is reimbursed based off of your available account balance. This is how it differs from the health care account. The IRS considers these to be predictable, where it consider the healthcare account to be unpredictable. Why that matters is because you do not have access to the full amount of what you allocated uh, right at the beginning of the year. You really do have to wait until you have built up those amounts into your healthcare, your dependent care reimbursement account. So if you have allocated $2,000 and we're halfway through the year and you've only got 1,000 or 1,500 in there, all you have access to is 1,500. All you will be reimbursed for is up to the 1,500. The other thing is reimbursements are paid out dependent on the date of service, not on the date of payment. That's important to understand because a lot of daycare, whether they're for children or for elderly adults, sometimes the facilities require you to pay first, pay up front, pay early, and then you take your child or your parent to the daycare facility. And a lot of times people think, well, I've paid it already, so I want to no, it has to be, it's based off of the date of actual service, not payment. Okay. So eligible daycare expenses, since it's different in terms of the nature of the reimbursement account than the healthcare ones, there are some things you want to know. So this is more based off of for the care. And daycare expenses are covered for children up to 13. So there are stipulations around age for the children. Preschool and nursery tuition is covered as the IRS does not consider this preschool to be preschool or nursery tuition, nursery type of environments to be educational. However, once a child enters kindergarten, only the before and after school care is eligible. Okay. You can be reimbursed for babysitter expenses, but they have to meet certain criteria. Um, they cannot be a dependent. So you can't have your kid babysitting your child, your younger child, and paying your dependent. It can be a grandparent or other relative, friend, or neighbor. It can be another child. They cannot be under the age of 19, though. And no license, though, is necessary. However, if you're going to have them do the babysitting and paying them for it and then getting reimbursed from your FSA, your daycare FSA, a social security number is going to be required when you submit the claim to CPI. So just keep that in mind. Summer day camp is covered if the care is provided that is in custodial in nature, not in education. So that's one thing to remember about, especially when it comes to daycare facilities for your children. They are really regulating the type of care, so it cannot be educational in nature, okay? Custodial and elder care expenses are reimbursable as long as the expenses are not attributable to medical services. And basically, what that kind of means is that whoever comes in or whoever is caring for your elderly parent, it can't be someone who is like a skilled nurse where they're the only ones that can do it. So there can't be medical services attributed to it. It has to be more of just watching them. And the individual must spend at least 8 hours per day in the employee's household. So, and when they're saying individual, that means the elderly parent. Okay. More about FSAs. Yes, there's more information. So first things first, you must re-enroll for the plan each year. Elections do not just happen automatically. So you need to remember to do that each year so that you don't use it and lose it. You need to make sure you indicate that you want, if you have funds left over, that you want that rolled over. And the other reason why you have to re-enroll each year is because you have to allocate whatever amount you want for the new year. It won't just automatically be assumed that, Jane Doe decided last year she wanted 1,500, so they're just going to assume she wants 1,500 for the next year. You have to specify. And elections are done during the open enrollment season in alignment with your medical. So open enrollment this year is September 16th through October 11th. And your annual elections cannot be changed after the start of the plan year unless there's a qualifying event. And some of the qualifying events are marriage or divorce, you have a new baby or you adopt a child, someone passes away, or there's a change in daycare provider. So those are some examples. For a full extensive list of what are some qualifying events, you're going to want to contact CPI. And in the event, this is another question that I get, in the event of termination, the end of the month in which you last contributed to the plan becomes your termination date, okay? So just know that. So CPI, some of you who have a FSA are probably thinking in your head, CPI, who is CPI? I don't know who that is. Okay, I'm going to tell you. So historically, for the past decade or so, the administrator for the flexible spending account program has been Shakely. The administration has now been assumed by a new company. It's Cobra Professionals Inc., or CPI for short. They are now the new administrators for the flexible spending accounts. If you currently have a flexible spending account that was serviced by Shakely, you should have already by now. I have had some of you reach out to me, but you should have received an email from CPI. And if you have not, please check your spam because it might trigger spam because of the email title, which is no reply at mycpiteam.com. And they would have sent you an email asking you to register your account. So if you have not done so, you might want to go ahead and try to see if it will still allow you to do that if you find the email. And if you don't find the email, try visiting this link here, which will take you to the log on page where it gives you the option to, if you're an existing member, log in here. If you're new, you can create your account on the right-hand side. If that still doesn't work, you can contact the CPI support, customer support at the 800 number that is listed in this presentation, which is 866-241-0237. Now, if you do not have an FSA, and you will have an FSA, or you're thinking of having an FSA, you're obviously going to want to make sure you contact your benefits department to set up to make sure you complete all of the proper steps, which is going to include you making sure that you have allocated the specific amount that you want taken out of your payroll deduction. Okay. So after you have done that, though, you are going to need to create a profile. You want to make sure you're creating a profile because this does affect the way that the many options that you have for reimbursement. It also affects your ability to set up direct deposit, which is the next bullet. If you do not set up direct deposit for your flexible spending account, then a paper check is going to be mailed to you. If you don't mind a paper check, then that's great. I personally do not like paper checks, but to each its own. But you would be setting up your direct deposit. You could set the direct deposit up through your account portal. It's pretty simple. I've seen some of the images now. I have not experienced it myself, and I don't know if anyone here on the line has already gone through the process. And when we open it up for discussion, I would like to hear if you have had any experience with setting up direct deposit if you're on here. That would be great to hear. So in terms of how you use your flexible spending account. So CPI has a benefit card called the WEX benefit card. And for those of you who used to have the Shakely card, you know that the Shakely card was supposed to be deactivated July 20th of this year, and they would have sent you your new WEX card to utilize to pay for flexible spending expenses, or expenses that are eligible. So what that really allows you to do in a nutshell is, instead of having to go through the reimbursement process of physically submitting a reimbursement form or claim form, as it's called, you can use your card in many cases. Not all the cases. It can't be guaranteed that the card's going to be accepted by all providers, but a lot do. And if the transaction is over $50, there is a possibility that they may require additional documentation. So just make sure you keep a copy of your receipts just in case that happens. However, when it comes to filing claims, as I mentioned, if you have to submit a claim as opposed to being able to use that WEX card, there are 4 different ways that you can do it. So you have options. You can submit it old school by fax. If you do submit it by fax, just know they can only accept faxes with a maximum of 15 pages. You can also submit your claim form via email. So I provided the email address here. And then if you set up your actual online portal, you can actually submit claims through your portal. For those of you who are very much like me, who like to have an app for everything, there is also a mobile app that you can use. So you would just need to download the app onto your phone, go through your whole profile setup. I am assuming that you will need to set up your account profile first before you set up the mobile app. There may be some options when you go through the mobile app that will allow you to set up your account portal. I don't know for certain. I would just recommend being on the safe side and going ahead and setting up your account portal page using your regular laptop or computer first, and then maybe download the app later, and because it will ask you to input your credentials to verify you. So I would suggest you do it in that order. However, it may allow you to just go straight to the mobile app, download it, and create your portal there. Should you run into any problems with any of this, you're going to want to contact CPI directly. And if you're manually submitting a claim for reimbursement, you can get that form either from CPI or your benefits department. I'm also going to make that form a downloadable resource. So there are multiple resources that I'm going to include along with this presentation deck. So you'll be able to download it. This is what the claims form looks like. So, and on the claims form, just to give you a heads up, a couple of things, they do have links to allow you to access your online portal where you can go through and do the claims process there, or click here for information on the mobile app, which will allow you to download the mobile app. And once you have the mobile app downloaded, you'll be able to submit claims with your receipts using the mobile app, very similar to if you had the Shakely FSA and you had the app there. You should be able to do something similar in nature. The one thing I do like about this claim form is that it does have qualifying care expenses, specifically for dependent care expenses. It might be worth it for you to just look at this simply to make sure that your dependent care expenses fall within the guidelines, because it does give you some guidance here. The other thing is that it does give you claim submission requirements. Make sure that you take a look at it before you submit your claims. But they do provide you with information here, and they do break it out based off of what type of claim that you're requesting reimbursement for. Are you requesting reimbursement for your flexible spending account, which is the healthcare one, which is the top one? Or are you requesting reimbursement for dependent care? Okay, so it does have that information here, and it does ask you a variety of information, including date of service for the dependent care. So again, just don't forget, with the dependent care, you are paid based off of, you submit based off of date of service, not when you paid your daycare provider. Some of the resources I mentioned, I want to just reiterate. You can actually contact the CPI customer service representatives by calling them at the 800 number I have listed here. They are available 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, or by email. You can email them at this email address here. And I have included a link here that includes some downloadable resources. I just want to show you what the downloadable resources are so you can see. I'm going to just share my screen here because I have the resources up, so you can see them. Let me just share this here, share screen. Okay. So this is information that is in the downloadable resources. That's essentially that very last link on the most recent slide that I just showed you. There are 4 in here. One of them is the claim form, which I showed you the screenshot of. And just know, when you click on the link for this particular document, these are hyperlinked. So when you click on it, it will take you to the online portal, which I don't know if you can see what I just clicked, because a lot of times in Zoom, it only allows you to share by app. So right now we're showing the PDF. So I'll show you what that looks like. But if you click on it, in essence, it takes you to the online portal page where you have the option to either log in if you have your portal set up, or to create it if you don't. Okay. And then this has also the link to access information on the mobile app, the telephone number, and the email address is hyperlinked here as well. Okay. The other thing that's in those downloadable resources is, once you set up your portal, how to activate your direct deposit. You have to have the portal set up first, as I understand it. Otherwise, you won't be able to access where to put any of this information. So this is after your account portal is set up, okay? How to file a claim. Again, after your account portal is set up, this is one of the 4 ways that I mentioned that you can submit your claim. So you can do it via fax, via email, mobile app, or through your portal, okay? If you decide to do mobile app, here is another document that is in those downloadable resources that will allow you to, there's a QR code, yes, QR code here for you to be able to scan, and it will help you with the steps of downloading the CPI app. And again, all of the same contact information. This is the 866 number in the presentation. This information is also on the downloadable resources. This link here takes you to the consumer portal page. And I'm going to just show you real quick what the consumer portal page looks like, just so it's not unfamiliar to you when you get ready to click on it and you know what you're looking at. So here is the consumer portal page. This is what it looks like. You've already got everything set up. This is where you're going to go to log in, put in your username. If you don't, click on this to get started, and it's going to start off with asking you information here. If when you get here, you put in your information, you'll get an alert that says we do not have your information on file. They will have a telephone number listed, which again is that 866 number. You want to call them and have them assist you with getting you set up. If when you call them, you run into high call volume, you cannot get anyone on the phone, we can always redirect you to another contact if you are experiencing problems. I'll try to see if I can locate some additional help for you on that. But in essence, that is what the portal looks like. That is what the resources look like. So I wanted to make sure I shared that with everyone because that is a change over last year, especially for those of you who have been used to going with Shakely in the past. Okay. All right. So that concludes the content.